My hot tip for actuaries aspiring to contribute in the boardroom is to give the background to your question. So often we think like actuaries and we think everyone else in the room is thinking like actuaries. They're not. They're not actuaries and they don't think like actuaries. For example, a company has 350,000 members or policyholders and 700 million with premium income. And you straight away, quick calculation in your head gives you $2,000 average premium per person. So you might express that the average premiums may be lower than you were expecting, seeing all the other numbers for the organisation. And no one in the room has any idea what you're talking about or any idea where you got that number. Take them on the journey.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast, where you'll meet leaders who use their actuarial powers to solve a range of problems and make a real difference. I am your host, Julia Lessing, and I'm a qualified actuary based in Australia. I help actuaries develop communication and leadership skills to build great actuarial careers. So settle in, learn from the best, and be inspired. Hi everyone, today we're talking about actuaries in the boardroom. How can actuaries bring value and diverse thinking to boards? And beyond that diverse thinking, what else do boards need to be effective? And what are some of the important topics facing organisations today where actuaries can add value? Joining us for this discussion is Elaine Collins, an experienced actuary and non-executive director, who's going to share her experience and reflections on these questions. Elaine is a fellow of both the Actuaries Institute and the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Following a senior actuarial career holding roles like Appointed Actuary and Big Four Partner, Elaine has spent over a decade as a non-executive director, serving on the board and chairing board committees of large organisations like Zurich Insurance, ARPC, RACV, ANZLMI and Ivory Insurance. And Elaine's also a Professor of Practice with the UNSW Business School, and she's served on several Actuaries Institute committees. Elaine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Julia.
What an impressive career you've had to date, Elaine. I've got so many questions for you. But first, I want to ask you the question I ask all my guests. Elaine, how do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world?
Comparing actual to expected and to last time. I think this is it's an essential discipline and no one does it properly except actuaries. Every time I see some results brought to me, I want to know what was it last time and what do we expect it to be? And only then do you get a really full picture of what the results mean and how you can actually change things going forward to make things better. Every time I'm shown results, it can be from HR, it can be from technology, it can be from the actuarial department, premiums or valuations, and then you would get an actuary as expected normally. But from other, HR wouldn't think of it unless you asked. But they just tell you the answer is 62, and you go, well, what do we expect it to be? 87. Well, why was it 62 instead of 87? What was it last time? 24. Well, why is it different to 24? It gives you a really full picture of what actually is happening in the organisation for all of those topics, not just the actuarial area. So that is one of the most important things, I think, and that's how you get a full picture of what's going on and how you can change things going forward.
I love that, Elaine, because actual to expected is one of those things that as actuaries we take for granted. It's a foundational skill in our toolkits, but as you've just described, it has so many applications and so much power. So, yeah, that's wonderful. I love that superpower. Thank you. Now, Elaine, we're going to talk a bit about actuaries in the boardroom today, but I want to just start by talking a bit about you because you qualified as a fellow in 1998. Your actuarial career has spanned consulting, appointed actuary roles, academia, and now non-executive director roles. And you've raised your son and daughter to adulthood. Congratulations, that's no small feat. And I know you're a keen runner. You've run the City to Surf, which is 14 kilometres or 8.7 miles for those in imperial terminology. You've run it 39 times. I mean, how do you manage to create balance in your life?
Well, I think it's not all about prioritising. The problem with prioritising is that you always have more important things in your life than some of the essential things like talking to your toddler about their day at preschool or going for a run. So you can't balance every day or every week or every month necessarily, but it's important to try to create a balance over time. So that way you just say, I haven't been for a run for a while, so I'm going to go for one tonight. Or you might want to spend some time talking to your husband and wife just in a nice, relaxed way. Even though you might have pressing work priorities in your mind, it's really important to allocate time to those, but then to say, I'm not going to do any more of those. I'm going to do some of these other important things in my life. So I think people get sometimes distracted by the terminology of prioritizing, because important work priorities are always going to be more important than some of those essential, relationship aspects, but overall in your life they're not more important, and that's what one needs to recognize, I think. And I have got a few things that make it easier for me. For example, I've joined a running club. I've been running's been a hobby of mine right since school, and I'd never joined a running club because I just thought, they're just too serious, like Strava is too serious for me. But then I came across this running club, Curably Runners, and it was really relaxed. And after that, they do a beautiful Thursday night run across the Harbour Bridge, round the Opera House, and back across the Harbour Bridge. I mean, that is just one of the most iconic 6-kilometre runs in the world. And after they all go to the Curably Hotel and have a drink and go and have a pizza. So it's just really such a friendly running club and so encouraging, and they have runs Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, but I try to always do Tuesday and Thursday, and then so that does help me prioritize running, because then I just stop what I'm doing, go for that run, and then come back. And also, it's so encouraging to have everyone in the club. For example, they're all targeting my 40th City to Surf next year, and that's just a really lovely, the kind of encouragement is really, really lovely. Yeah. So I think you also need to spend time planning. And I heard a great philosophy the other day. It was actually to some Year 12 students from their career counsellor. And another mum told me that the career counsellor says to Year 12 students, you only have to do 3 things: dream, plan, and act. And I love that, because I think it applies to all of us. I think the really fine thing about it is that it actually legitimizes dreaming and planning, because so often we think we haven't done anything useful in a day because we haven't done enough actions. But dreaming and planning are a really important part of that. And if you think about the work environment, we absolutely do that. We have strategy days, we have blue sky thinking, we have things where our organisation is asking us to think of different ways to do things, to be innovative, to think of something new. And then clearly we have a lot of planning in the organisation. In fact, we have project managers, their only job is really to do planning. And then we have, of course, the execution of the activities, and that's often left to the front line, and the front line is so important. And I could get onto another topic of mine, Julia, risk management. Risk management is all about the front line. It is all about how to help the front line execute their tasks for the organisation, managing the risks that they come across. So I just love that thinking, dream, plan, and act, because it legitimizes all 3 of those, and I think that helps you create a more balanced existence.
That's amazing, Elaine. I love your take on prioritization, because it is such a buzzword, really. What does it mean? And it seems to be such a crucial thing when it comes to time management and balance and managing our busy lives. But I like the way that you've taken a different angle with that, and thinking about not just priority in terms of urgency or work requirements, but in terms of life requirements. And some of those examples that you gave, like talking to a toddler after their day at preschool, there's no time in the diary for that. There's no deadline around that, but it's such an important thing to create space for. So I love your take on that. And then the dream, plan, act, I think that's such a great way to summarize a strategy for us, whether we're trying to create balance at home or in our work lives, or across both. So yeah, fantastic advice. So you've talked a bit about the role of, how you've used your actuarial superpowers with the actual and expected. And you've also talked about how you've applied risk management, some of the actuarial training to your life and creating balance. But specifically, I want to talk about boards. So Elaine, how do you see actuaries bringing value and diverse thinking to boards?
I think actuaries can see the big picture and the fine detail at the same time. And I don't think there's many professions that can do that. most people seem to be either big picture people or fine detail people. Whereas I think actuaries can see both. And it's really important to see both because sometimes there's inconsistencies between the big picture and the fine detail. And you can't have that. They need to be consistent or things will go awry. The other aspect I think that actuaries are good at is spotting inconsistencies between board papers in the boardroom. And that's not unexpected because the board papers are produced by different personnel, different departments in the management team. So it's quite easy for there to be inconsistencies, and that's also important to address because it could lead to things going in different directions. However, a key thing, Julia, is that actuaries need to be really careful, I think, in the boardroom around how you point these things out because management can easily take it as criticism. And we don't want to criticize. We are there to add value in the boardroom. We do think differently to the other people around the table, and we want to add value in that thinking differently. So it's really important when one notices these things to think about how to make a contribution in the boardroom and how to balance supporting management and querying maybe some of the things that management are proposing. So I just wanted to emphasise that it's important to create that balance, Julia.
Okay, so we have to be careful when we're highlighting those inconsistencies that we're doing it in a respectful way and a constructive way, not in a way that's seen as criticism, but it sounds like that's a great actuarial superpower that we bring to the boardroom as actuaries. So, Elaine, beyond diversity, what else do you think is important for boards to be effective?
I think collegiality is really important. It's really important because when the board executes its role of overviewing and looking at various aspects of risk and opportunity, it's really important to have diverse thinking around the table, and that way the board is more likely to really address the risks and also take up the opportunities. But at the same time, the board needs to reach a decision at the end of all that discussion. And if there's not enough collegiality around the boardroom table, the board won't reach a decision. So I think collegiality is as important as diversity. And I feel that it's not mentioned as often as diversity, and it should be.
Such an underrated but so important aspect of effective boards and effective teams, I suppose, as well. Collegiality, being able to work together.
I agree. And the other aspects around the board role around your board performance and helping management, particularly those two aspects, I think really need collegiality around the boardroom table.
Thanks, Elaine. Curious to explore some of the current hot topics that organisations are facing today. What are some of those important topics that you're seeing, and how do you see actuaries adding value in those areas?
Well, my three hot topics at the moment, Julia, are generative artificial intelligence, climate impact, and nature impact.
Nature impact.
That's a new one. That's hot off the press, Julia. It's hot off the press.
Still very familiar, but not so much nature. So I'm keen to hear more.
Okay. So firstly, generative AI. Generative AI requires huge databases, very, very big data, lots of data analytics, lots of interpretation. And, the role around generative AI is to, increase value of businesses, to assist customers. And I think all of that, as soon as there's huge data analytics and projections and application, that is where actuaries just come to the fore. So I think actuaries are perfectly positioned to be on this path of generative AI becoming so important in the world. I think that we need to try and insert ourselves in that conversation as much as we can. We're not the obvious choice of businesses, governments, communities wanting analytics, data analytics, and so I think it's important for us to insert ourselves into that topic and help people recognise that actuaries are good at this kind of stuff. Way back, 400 years ago in the coffee shops of London, Lloyd's got created, and they were thinking about the insurance premium to charge ships that might go down on their voyage. And that's all about data. It's all about projections. And so actuaries have been looking at data and creating projections for 400 years. And now the data sets are different. They're much larger. The way we create projections is different. But those aspects of looking at your data and creating projections projections, that's now everywhere. That's not only in the insurance game, it's in all businesses. All businesses are now realizing how valuable their data is to them and how some kind of projection is going to help them increase the value of their business. And I think actuaries are really, really good at interpreting the results of data analytics. I think there's lots and lots of programmers and experts out there doing lots of programming and coding. But I think that actuaries, it's the way our course is created, the kind of practice we do when we're being educated, the practice we do when we actually have our first early roles in actuarial careers. And I think that actuaries just end up being really, really good at interpreting the results of data analytics and what it means for the business. So I'm hoping that we can continue to tell people that and start to come into and continue to be in these roles to help people around us. It's not just us that need to be in those roles, but I think we can help people around us interpret results better. So I just think that's a really important part of our actuarial contribution. Then to climate and nature, these are really now two sides of the same coin. There was a session in Sydney a few weeks ago where Tanya Plibersek was I know she was part of the presentation team. Where it got created, I've got to get the right dates here. The Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, the TCFD, has now developed a disclosure framework for business. And the exact date I have here on the 22nd of August, 2024, the Australian Senate passed the Treasury Laws Amendment, Financial Markets Infrastructure and Other Measures Bill 2024, which requires certain organisations to make mandatory climate-related financial disclosures in their annual reports for financial years commencing after 1 January 2025. So that's the facts behind it. Similarly, there's now a TNFD, a Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, and they're developing a disclosure framework for organisations, and these are expected to become compulsory too. As mentioned in a recent Actuaries Digital publication, the global economy is fundamentally reliant on a healthy and functioning natural world, which provides a vast array of services. But there's a lack of quantification, which can lead to business decisions that degrade ecosystems, ultimately posing a risk to long-term economic stability and growth. I just think that's such an important topic for us going forward. And again, I think actuaries are perfectly positioned to help on this. I have to tell you, I recently attended a Women's Chief of Enterprise International Congress. So these are women who actually run their own businesses. And it was an international congress. And we all came together in Daltone House in Darling Harbour. And it was so interesting and so enjoyable. And we did have a presentation on the power of creative collaboration between business and environmental advocacy, which is just amazing. And I went to that session. It was actually a concurrent session, but I loved that topic. And it was really the same topic, even though the presenter didn't realise it at all. She was talking about the intersection of art, business, and the environment, which is a great intersection. She was developing it completely as a value add for business rather than a disclosure requirement. But I think she's right. I think it is a value add for business. There's so many disclosure requirements and prudential standards that are value adds for business. But business needs to see them in that way rather than just going, oh, here's another compliance requirement that we have to obey. In the bigger picture, so many of those requirements can be made to be value adding, but the business has to think more and concentrate more and focus more and summarise more rather than writing 42-page documents, Julia. And I think if you do that, you can start to make some of these legal requirements and regulatory requirements a value add for the business rather than simply a compliance requirement. But we have to insert ourselves into this topic too. As I have seen in my board meetings, that accountants have it all sewn up right now. So we need to make that move, Julia.
So some great opportunities for us as actuaries to use our superpowers across some really important hot industry topics, Gen AI, and then the both sides of the coin, climate and nature. And that's an interesting way. I haven't heard that described around the nature side as well, Elaine, but I agree with you. There's a lot of opportunity there for us to really make a difference and to be able to use our actuarial superpowers to make a difference in a range of different areas. So thank you for sharing those current hot topics with us. It's been wonderful hearing a bit about your story, how you maintain balance, how you use your actuarial superpowers, how you see actuaries bringing value and diverse thinking to boards, and also some of the current hot topics as you've just described. So, Elaine, I'd like to finish our interview with one question, and it's this. What is one tip you'd have for actuaries aspiring to contribute in the boardroom?
My hot tip for actuaries aspiring to contribute in the boardroom is to give the background to your question. So often we think like actuaries and we think everyone else in the room is thinking like actuaries. They're not. They're not actuaries and they don't think like actuaries. I'll give you an example. They basically need to understand the rationale from where you're coming from. I'll give you an example. For example, a company has 350,000, an organized like a trust. It'll be a company, 350,000 members, or policyholders, and 700 million with premium income. And you straight away, quick calculation in your head gives you $2,000 average premium per person. So you might express that the average premiums may be lower than you were expecting, seeing all the other numbers for the organisation. And no one in the room has any idea what you're talking about or any idea where you got that number. Take them on the journey.
Love it. Great advice, Elaine. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure your tips are going to be very helpful for all of our actuaries listening today. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
So there you have it, real life stories and practical tips from a leader using their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to get in touch, subscribe, leave us a review and share it with your network. You'll find details from today's interview in the show notes below and on our website www.guardianactuarial.com.au. Until next time.